TikTok, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. I'm your friendly neighborhood philosopher, David Wood, and with me now is the world's leading authority on all matters related to jihad, except some of the, possibly some of the Islamic preachers who preach this sort of thing regularly. They would actually know their stuff when it comes to what's in their sources. Although when it comes to the history of jihad and what's going on around the world, there is none greater than Robert Spencer, who is also the author of The Critical Quran. And Robert, on this note of the Critical Quran, on this note, since I would regard what happened as a form of jihad, but I'm a little confused here. Maybe you can explain it, because one minute I would go to Amazon and it would say that this is the #1 best-selling Quran in the world. It's listed #1 bestseller in Quran, and I could go to the list of all the best-selling Qurans and go up the list, and I actually made a video about this. I could go up the list. You could go all the way down really, really far to, the 487 billionth, not that far, but you could go really far down in the rank of Qurans being sold, and you go all the way up to the very top. And then this one was at the top. And then a minute later, it wasn't on the list at all. Nowhere on the entire list, and wasn't listed as the best-selling Quran, not listed as a Quran at all. So what happened there?
Well, David, apparently it's not a Quran. I thought it was a Quran.
It says it right there.
Yeah.
It's in the title.
It's got 114 surahs in there. And
it does have 114 surahs. What?
And, all the Quran business, it's all in there. It's actually the most faithful translation of the Quran that I know of. And it's full, it's complete. There they
all
are.
the chapters here. Hang on. Let me see.
Yep.
Let me see. Okay, 39 all the way all the way up to 114. All the way up to 114. Huh. That's weird. And yet Amazon has decided that it's not a Quran.
Yep.
That's what creeps me out, in case you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, that's a problem with monopolies. Once you get a monopoly, you no longer have any competition, and you can start enforcing the most insane rules you want to. You can capitulate to anything you want, and no one can do anything about it because there's nowhere else to go, really, right? And so we see that. I mean, all the entertainment industries are being bought up by Disney, and then, Google's buying up a ton of stuff. Facebook's buying up a ton of stuff. Everything's buying up a couple stuff. As far as buying stuff, Amazon buys everything up. And then it looks like we're, another couple of years, everything is going to be owned by like 5 companies. And then no one can question any insane thing they do because there's nowhere else to go. And if you get on their bad side, cancel it. You can't sell your stuff anymore. You can't buy stuff anymore. Pretty creepy.
Yeah, and every time now I go to the link, I'm just hoping it's still there, because they've decided it's not a Quran. Maybe they'll decide that it's not a book tomorrow. But in any case, the funny thing about this is, obviously they don't like it because it is a critical look at the Quran, not a fulsomely positive one. But what's interesting about it is that the book that was #2, that is now the #1 best-selling Quran, is actually not a Quran. It's called The Secrets of Divine Love, and it's some quotations from the Quran, quotations from Rumi, quotations from various other Islamic sources. So it's sort of an inspirational book. It is not a Quran any more than a book full of Bible verses mixed in with quotations from other sources is a Bible. And so they have taken a book that is a Quran and taken it out of the Quran list and replaced it with a book that is not a Quran. And that is now the #1 best-selling Quran. Although actually the Critical Quran is still outselling it.
So did you catch that, everyone? Robert Spencer's Critical Quran was #1, and they said somehow, well, that's no longer a Quran. We've decided that it's no longer a Quran. But there are a bunch of books that are on the list of the Quran, of the best-selling Qurans, that just contain quotations from the Quran. They're not complete Qurans. They're not 114 surah Qurans, but those are fine. Just not this one. Not the critical Quran. It's not a Quran. And obviously, it's pretty obvious what happened. We started talking about this being the #1 best-selling Quran in the world because that was its Amazon ranking. And then a bunch of people from, who knows where, started whining to Amazon, saying, "Oh, this is Islamophobe, and he's criticizing the Quran. This hurts our feelings, and you guys are bigots." And they said, "Oh no, we can't allow this because these feelings decide what we can have on our lists of the best sellers." And that's really creepy, Robert, because you could actually, someone could have the best-selling book in the world, and Amazon could just say, "Nope, we no longer think of this as a book anymore. We're going to think of it as a television." And and then you're no longer the best-selling book. And the point is, people use these lists to buy products, right? People are looking up Qurans. They might look on the list of the best-selling Qurans and so on. So to actually be taken off this list, actually, they're tipping the scales once again, right? They're trying to push things in certain directions.
It's an attempt at sales suppression. And, I'll tell you another thing, too. It's obvious, David, that if there were a Bible that were exactly like my critical Quran, that is written by a non-Christian, going through the Bible and explaining what the mainstream biblical commentators have explained about the various passages and giving variant readings and explaining passages that are problematic and how mainstream Christians understand them and so on. Do you think Amazon would axe that if it became the #1 selling Bible?
No, and it would not matter how many Christians started whining about it. It would just not be an issue. And guys, keep in mind what Robert does in this Quran is he'll say, here's a verse. He'll say, here are multiple Muslim commentaries on what this means. Here's how it was understood back then. Here's some historical background on this topic. Here's a textual variant for this verse, and so on. All of it's information that you can gather. It's just all the information has been gathered and put in one spot, and somehow gathering a bunch of information that you get from Muslim sources and historical sources means that it's no longer a Quran. Very interesting. But if you write a book and you quote a Quran and it's all lovey-dovey, then you're still a Quran. You could be the #1 best-selling Quran in the world now. Interesting.
It's like being banned from Britain. I was banned from Britain for saying Islam has doctrines of violence against unbelievers. Now, Islam does have doctrines of violence against unbelievers, and Britain regularly admits Islamic preachers who preach violence against unbelievers. There was just a controversy in the last couple of weeks about another one that they let in. And so clearly, Britain is not against people saying that Islam has doctrines of violence against unbelievers. You just have to support those doctrines.
Yeah, you can say that it has those doctrines. You just can't be critical, right?
Exactly.
You can't be critical of the doctrines, right?
Being critical is the whole problem here.
So let me just look at an example here. If I open up the critical Quran to Surah 98, and I go to verse 6, I read, "Indeed, the unbelievers among the people of the book," so Jews and Christians, "and the idolaters will remain in the fire of Gehenna. They are the most vile of created beings." So if I read here that the people of the book, so Jews and Christians, are the most vile of created beings, it's fine if it were a Muslim publishing company putting this out and saying that that's what we put forward as the Quran. But if you're critical of the claim that Jews and Christians are the vilest of created beings, you can't be a Quran anymore. Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting rules.
Yes, indeed. No, indeed.
It's funny. It's like if you were making some sort of science fiction world or something like this, and you, in your story, in your science fiction world, you said that these are the things that are going on in the world, it would be too stupid and unbelievable to think,
yeah,
get rid of that book. It's too unbelievable. And yet it's reality.
Yeah, I thought it was absurd years ago when I would get quoted in the Islamophobia Observatory of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. This is back 2003, 2004, 2005. And it would be things from Jihad Watch where I would be quoting some Islamic preacher. And the Islamic preacher would be saying, kill them wherever you find them, or something like that. And I would quote him, and they would say, and Spencer says Islam teaches kill them wherever you find them. And this is a terrible Islamophobia. And
Yeah.
I thought that was absurd, but now it's pretty much taken for granted everywhere that all this is just fine until an unbeliever quotes it.
All right. Well, that's jihad of the complaint or jihad of the whining or something like that with respect to Amazon. It's a new kind of jihad where they sit around and whine all day and somehow get their way with massive corporations that definitely want to capitulate to as much whining as possible. But there is still good old fashioned jihad, which we see, pretty regularly. One Islamic group blowing up another group's mosque and so on like that. So, has there been any old school jihad in the news recently, or anything that would fall into roughly that category?
David, unfortunately, yes. I know that you know about this story. You just mentioned it, of course, and also I saw the video you did on it. The blast in Kabul at the Sufi mosque, where the congregation was praying zikr prayers, and this is considered heretical by Sunnis, and so they blew up the mosque. At least 50 people killed after Friday prayers in the mosque in Kabul. And this, of course, comes from the death penalty for heresy in Islam. They're practicing a heretical prayer, and thus they are to be killed. And it is considered to be pleasing to Allah to kill them, because the Muslims are the executors of the wrath of Allah, as per Quran 9:14 and 15.
So let me get this straight. No, this was still in Ramadan?
Yeah, I believe it was
I think it was at the
April.
very end of Ramadan, wasn't it? The last
It was.
Friday of Ramadan?
That's right.
And we would, of course, be told that since this was one Muslim sect attacking another Muslim sect, that those can't be Muslims. They definitely can't be true Muslims since they were attacking another Muslim sect. But I'm looking in the critical Quran here, and I see a pretty good translation here of Surah 9, verse 73. O Prophet, wage jihad against the unbelievers and the hypocrites. Be harsh with them. Their ultimate dwelling place is Gehenna, an evil destination. Ultimate dwelling place, Gehenna, same as for Jews and Christians who, according to Surah 98, verse 6, we saw were the worst of creatures, the vilest of created beings. And here, Muhammad himself is ordered to wage jihad not just against unbelievers, but against hypocrites, people they regard as hypocrites. And isn't it interesting that any Muslim in the world today, whether from ISIS or Boko Haram or some group in Afghanistan, any Muslim who actually obeys the command to fight against, not just against unbelievers, but also against hypocrites, people who are claiming to be Muslims but are doing something inappropriate. If you obey the Quran, somehow that means you're not a Muslim. But if you ignore the Quran, you're good. Very interesting world we live in.
That's the wonderful Islamic scholars that we have all through the American government as well as in the governments of Western Europe. All these governments are filled with non-Muslims who are absolute experts on the Quran, like Hillary Clinton, who said Islam has nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. And of course, Joe Biden has said that Islam is a peaceful religion, John Kerry, many, many others. And we know that they are all experts on the Quran, on par with Pope Francis, who has said authentic Islam and the proper reading of the Quran reject every form of violence. And so they know that when Muslims blow up mosques that are full of heretics or people they think are heretics, then they must be violating the tenets of Islam. The only people they've not managed to convince are the Muslims waging jihad in this way themselves, who read 973 and other passages and believe that they have a responsibility before Allah to act in this way.
Islam is a Islam is weird in that way. It's the only religion where the less you study it, the more of an expert you are.
Yes, that's
And
right.
the more you study it, the less you can be trusted on anything.
Yes. So
Interesting.
I've been reading the Quran. I first read the Quran in 1982, I think it was. And so that's 40 years now.
That's why we can't trust you.
Yeah, yeah, because
Or your
obviously
Quran.
well, or whatever it is.
It's not. It's a non-Quran. You should change the name from the critical Quran to not a Quran.
Yes. The critical un-Quran.
The critical non-Quran.
Okay, New Jersey. A New Jersey software developer named Alexei Saab had a double life, a very exciting double life. His double life was that by day he was a mild-mannered software engineer for technology companies and a naturalized American citizen. But by night, he scouted Jihad massacre sites for Hezbollah in New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C., including Rockefeller Center, Grand Central Terminal, all three New York area airports, the Brooklyn Triborough and George Washington bridges, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels connecting New Jersey to Manhattan, among other locations in New York, plus the Quincy Market and the Prudential Center in Boston, and in Washington, the Capitol Building, Congress, and the White House. So what on earth would possibly have motivated Alexei Saab to leave his comfortable job as a software engineer and go out scouting targets for jihad massacres for Hezbollah?
Can't be
What on
anything.
earth?
Can't be anything apart from mental illness.
Yeah, that must be it.
Sudden jihad syndrome.
That's right. Mental illness over a period of quite a considerable period of time for him to be able to amass all the photographs of all these places that he was scoping out for jihad attacks. There's so many different kinds of mental illness, so many different ways that it can come on. And there was actually another story that I'm searching for in all my tabs. David, I'm going to have to find a better way to organize all this.
Yeah, you just. I don't know how you can see anything because you just open like 60 or 70 tabs along a big line on the top, and you can't even see what's in those things.
Yeah, right. But I did find it. A University of Alabama student, nice Southern girl. Oh, I just lost it. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'm not leaving this tab now, David, until we talk about this. A Southern belle named Allah Muhammad Abu Saad from the University of Alabama. And what she did was she was David. Now, David, she was financing Al Qaeda, and her lawyers say that she's mentally ill, and you know that she is.
I'm laughing because you sound like a bunch of my relatives now.
Well, now, David, there's a reason for that, and I just want to tell you, I'm not going to finance Al Qaeda myself, but this girl, Allah Muhammad Abu Saad, she did it, but she was mentally ill, and that's why she did it. So you can't really blame her for nothing, or you certainly can't blame Islam for it.
Of course not. Of course not. I actually, when I was little, I had an accent like that, but I've been to so many different places since then. Lived for 13 years in the Bronx, spent time in prison, all kinds of places. Lost my accent, but every once in a while it'll like slip out in some weird random way. Like I was at I was at a university once, and I was looking for a particular room, and I couldn't find it, and I walked all the way down the hall, and then I walked back, and I walked into a room, and I go, anyone know where room such and such is? And a girl there goes, oh yeah, it's right down there, blah blah blah. And I go, I done been there. And I walked out, and I go, I done been there? What the heck? What did I just say? That's how I would talk. I done been. Some of you who are from West Virginia or Alabama or something like that will know I done been there.
Now you sound like Allah Muhammad Abu Saad.
Yeah. I speak her language. I speak her language, and none of you can criticize if you do not speak the language, mind you.
That's right. Allahu Akbar. Okay, back. Let's be being serious. In Italy, in Rome, in a pizzeria in Turin. Actually, it didn't happen in the pizza joint. It happened at home, at the victim's home in Turin. Mohammed Mustafa, a cook in this pizza joint in Bangladesh, went to the home of Mohammed Ibrahim, a dishwasher in the same pizza joint in Turin. I believe I said Rome before. I'm sorry, it's Turin. And anyway, they quarreled. It's not clear what they had the argument about, but ultimately Mohammed Mustafa beheaded Mohammed Ibrahim. And so probably whatever it had to do with made Mohammed Mustafa think that Mohammed Ibrahim was no longer precisely a Muslim. Because, of course, we know the famed Quran passage, when you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks, which is 47:4. And, of course, 8:12, also Allah commands the angels to strike the necks and the fingertips, once again, of the unbelievers. And so this is the kind of thing that we see in Italy now with the large influx of Muslim migrants.
It sucks because, I mean, we know there are plenty of Muslims who don't carry out these commands, but there's so many misunderstanders who do, right? Mm-hmm. There's people who, they read, if anyone leaves his Islamic religion, kill him. If anyone leaves Islam, chop off his head. They read things like that, and they think that Muhammad meant what he said, and it's just a shame that they don't realize, like so many Western Muslims, that Muhammad never means what he says. He means the opposite.
Interestingly enough, speaking about not all Muslims beheading people and so on, there's the story of Muhammad al-Saiti. Muhammad al-Saiti, who is the former imam at the Didsbury Mosque in Manchester, England. And Muhammad al-Saiti was at the bombing inquiry for the Manchester Arena Jihad bombing a few years back, and he condemned Jihad activity while he was at the inquiry. Now that's extraordinary. But he was approached near his home by three men, telling him, you'll be dead if you continue to speak out against jihad activity. And so this was so serious that he has now fled for his life and has moved to a secret location because it is no longer safe for him to remain in Manchester. Now, this is an interesting story in light of the fact that we constantly hear that the jihadis are a tiny minority of extremists who are condemned by the vast majority of Muslims who are peaceful. And there's no doubt that there is a huge number of Muslims who are peaceful and will never wage jihad. However, it is extraordinary that somebody like Muhammad al-Saiti, after preaching against the jihadis, is not able to fall back upon a large support system of Muslims who are peaceful in Manchester. Instead, he has to flee and live in a secret location. Why is it that this tiny minority of extremists is so powerful and able to do this on such a large scale?
Yeah, and this is always going to be a problem as the percentages change within a population. You can have a ton of very peaceful, tolerant Muslims who've completely adopted Western values and have no intention of carrying out Muhammad's command to wage jihad against unbelievers or to kill hypocrites or to kill apostates and so on. And as soon as you start disagreeing with some of the doctrines of the ones who actually want to obey Allah and violently subjugate the entire world, well, guess what? Now you're in that hypocrite category. Now they put you in the hypocrite category, or they might put you in the apostate category. But either way, now you're a target. And so there are not going to be a lot of people who rally around you to support you when rallying around you to support your criticisms of classical Islam is going to make them targets as well. And so as the percentage, this happens over and over again, as the percentage of Muslims in a population rises, it starts to veer more on the side of the ones who want to actually subjugate the world in the name of Allah. And so plenty of peaceful Muslims out there, but as the numbers change, those will be silenced. They'll either have to get on board or have to start running with the rest of us.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. No, indeed. Speaking of hypocrites, David, we have several stories in that line. I just had them here. I know they's here. Oh, here's one. Germany, an Afghan Muslim migrant. Let me see if his name has been released. No, just Samad Q. He caused a bloodbath in the living room of his home as his daughter, 2 years old, his 2-year-old daughter, was sleeping peacefully. He murdered his wife, stabbing her 29 times. And she, of course, was killed. He explained that he did it because he was angry with her for having adopted a Western lifestyle. And so here again is a confirmation of what you're talking about, that somebody who wants to live not strictly according to Sharia is considered to have transgressed against the tenets of Islam regarding hypocrisy, regarding apostasy, and more, and consequently is killed by her own husband. In let's see, there was another one. Oh, in Belgium. Yes.
One second here.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to check your translation on this. Just wanted to check the critical Quran. Well, the critical non-Quran. There are multiple important verses along these lines, but let's see. Surah 4, verse 65 in the critical Quran. But know, by your Lord, they will not believe until they make you judge of what is in dispute between them, and find within themselves no dislike of what you decide, and submit with full submission. So this is Allah speaking to Muhammad. He says, you can't be a real believer until you make Muhammad judge of anything that you dispute. And you cannot find within yourself any dislike of what Muhammad has decided. And you submit to everything Muhammad has decided with full submission. Notice, Islam isn't simply the religion of submission to God. It's the religion of submission specifically to Muhammad. But notice what that says. You're not a real Muslim if you do not submit fully to everything Muhammad says. And if you have any dislike for something Muhammad has said, you're not a real Muslim. But guess what? If you recite the Shahada, you've become a Muslim. If you're raised as a Muslim, you're a Muslim. And yet all of a sudden you're living a Western lifestyle, not following what Muhammad has said. And that makes you an apostate. And then your husband stabs you to death and, of course, has nothing to do with Islam.
Indeed. And yet it keeps happening. And so we have another story out of Belgium. A gentleman named Gurgis Yunan, and he had a sister named Ahlam. And they moved to Belgium, to Liège, and she also adopted a Western European lifestyle. And he also murdered her. So exactly the same thing happened in this case. And it was, as you and I know, for exactly the same motives and with exactly the same mindset. But these are things that Western authorities seem resolutely determined never to acknowledge. And so they treat each one of these cases as baffling and do not understand how it is that anybody would want to murder a family member, much less one for such a reason as having adopted a Western lifestyle. They have cut off from themselves the true understanding of these things, and this is why they always fall back on these bogus explanations like, oh, they're mentally ill.
Yeah, whenever a story comes out, I'm always thinking, well, is this something that could have some other cause other than Islam? So when I hear a Muslim killed his wife, I'm thinking, well, come on, lots of guys kill their wives and lots of wives kill their husbands and so on. Did he just get mad about some random thing and he's just a hothead and so on? But then, you find out, it's because she has become a hypocrite or an apostate by her lifestyle, and therefore she has to be killed. Or I just cannot go on considering myself a good Muslim without killing her.
In a similar vein, in Uganda, a woman named Zaina Gimbo became a Christian. She was a Muslim, and she became a Christian on April 2nd. And soon after that, when her husband, Jamiro Muima, went fishing, it was April 17th. And so she decided to go to Easter services. And her husband apparently found out about this. And she says, immediately the door opened, and there and then my husband came out, very furious. My husband beat and cut me with a long knife. And then she called people, and she says, I made an alarm that brought many people who came and disarmed him. I fell down bleeding seriously and lost consciousness. Same reason. Apostasy carries a death penalty in Islam. And so even though this is this man's wife, he believes that he has a responsibility before Allah to put her to death because she has become a Christian.
And you've got so many people in so many Muslim countries who would love to leave their religion but are terrified of something like that being done to them. And then you've got Muslim apologists running around saying it's a miracle of Islam how rapidly the religion is spreading, when, as you know, the main source of Islam's growth in recent years has been the explosive birth rates. Muslims have the highest birth rates in every area, according to Pew Research. And then once you're raised as a Muslim, you live in a state of fear of leaving it. Even with that, the statistics have been shifting over the past few years to the point where now 24% of Muslim youth are leaving Islam. It's estimated that somewhere around 5% of Muslims in Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries, are actually closet atheists now. So the fear which has been what's holding so many people in Islam, the fear of these things are going to happen, doesn't look like it's going to last long term. Because very soon, I mean, what happens when the number of apostates, who are atheists goes from 5% to 10% or 20% or something like that? The number of Christians rises and so on. I don't know. You guys need to come up with a plan B here. One quick comment here.
Innovation.
Yeah. One quick comment here from Malcolm Cumberbatch. Hi, I just got my critical Quran, and it's not signed. I don't know if I can trust this Quran now. My jihad now is to deal with that not being signed. No, indeed. For those of you who didn't see our show on Surah 96, you're not going to understand what the no indeed means. So you need to go back and watch that. But yes, Malcolm, I would encourage you to follow Robert's speaking engagements and see when he's speaking at a university near you, and then you can go get that signed.
Or you could email me at director@jihadwatch.org, and we can see what we can work out. In the meantime, in Sudan, Muslims entered a church. This was, let's see, April 10th. So it was Palm Sunday in Sudan, and Muslims entered the church, and they attacked 3 Christians, started to attack people. the pastor was actually arrested, even though he was punched and his shirt was torn, and two other people were assaulted. Bibles were torn, chairs were broken, and so on. But the only person who was arrested was not the assailants, but the pastor. Because, of course, this is Sudan, a Muslim country. And so the authorities see Muslims attacking Christians in a church. Obviously, they're going to believe that the most vile of created beings are at fault and not the best of people.
So, and think about what kind of message that sends when you do something like that, and then the police punish the pastor who was attacked, right? So you storm someone's church, you rough everyone up, you attack the pastor, and then police come and say, "Shame on that pastor for being attacked. Don't worry, we'll take care of this." And that sends a message. What's that?
I'm so sorry, my nose interrupted the trajectory of your fist.
Yeah, shame on that pastor. And yeah, that sends a very clear message to anyone else. It's open season on churches.
And it's certainly open season on Christians in general in Nigeria. There's always news out of Nigeria, terrible news. One of the most recent attacks, I can't actually say the most recent attack because pretty much every day they happen. But on April 26th, Muslims attacked 4 villages in Kaduna State in Nigeria, killing 18 Christians, burning down 92 houses. And it has been repeatedly noted by the Christian leaders in Nigeria that these people are targeting the Christians in particular and burning down Christian homes and churches. And yet the Western media constantly, when they notice this at all, calls the attackers Fulani herdsmen and gives no hint of this being a religious conflict. And yet it is the Christian leaders in Nigeria who have been extremely explicit and consistent in saying that this is the reason behind the attacks. This is a jihad.
And I've pointed out multiple times before, ladies and gentlemen, do not underestimate the importance of Nigeria, one of the most important spots in the world as far as the spread of Islam in its true form, the form you want nothing to do with. It is not westernized. That is the dividing line. You have predominantly Muslims up north, you have predominantly Christians down south, and the Muslim population is constantly trying to push that line further and further south. And they will not, I mean, it doesn't stop once you take all of Nigeria. You just keep going. Right? That's part of the expansion and so on. And yet, never gets mentioned anywhere except for by Robert Spencer.
If Nigeria becomes completely Islamic, then we'll start hearing about jihad in Benin and Togo. Actually, we've already started hearing about it in Benin. It never came up in 20 years of Jihad Watch. I never had a story out of Benin, but David and I have talked about 2 over the last few weeks. And this is look at a map, you'll see why that's happening and how it will spread from there.
And I mean, just imagine. I mean, because we talked last week about well, we always talk about reporters and how by ignoring certain stories, they actually have an impact on people's perceptions of various issues. But just imagine if every story about jihad were daily news here in the West, all of a sudden people would start understanding how big this problem is, right? If every time you turn on the news, it's another jihad attack, and you see it, and here it is in the Philippines, here it is in Afghanistan, here it is in Pakistan, here it is in India, here it is in Israel, here it is in Kuwait, here it is in pretty much every place in northern or now Central Africa. Here it is all over Europe. If you just heard this constantly, if you just heard the daily news about jihad, all of a sudden people realize, whoa, this is absolutely non-stop, relentless attack on everyone in the name of Allah.
And this is a choice that the media makes. We hear about media bias, and there's a lot written and talked about, but this point David is making has not been made, that the media really, there's plenty of jihad news. Go to Jihad Watch and you'll see it. And there's all the rest of it that I don't even get to. And even if the media were to cover all this, they wouldn't be able to cover it all. And yet they have made a conscious choice. I mean, CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox, all of them, left and right, they have all made a decision, we're not going to cover jihad. If they had made a decision to cover it, there would be more than enough for them to do what Dave is talking about and have daily news about jihad activity. And so this is something else to understand about media bias, that they are framing the narrative in a way for you to think that this is not going on. Because most of us are not in Kaduna, and we do not see this happening all the time right in front of our faces.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to Asak here from watching us there in Kaduna State, Nigeria. And Robert, you know it's interesting. Lots of viewers of my videos are from Nigeria. The number 2 place in the world for watching my videos. So United States is number 1, but the number 2 source of views from any place in the world is India. It used to be, United States and like Great Britain, then Canada, then Australia, and so on. But India is now number 2 overall. But on specific videos, I'll look at the stats and it'll be India number 1 on certain videos, something that is relevant to them. And so it's people who are actually confronted with it and who can't ignore it, who are looking for information about what's going on in their countries. And meanwhile, everyone in the West is pretty insistent on ignoring what's happened in all these places.
Indeed. And so since we have viewers in India, I'll give you a story from Bangladesh.
You have the best transitions ever made. Always.
You may have seen these pictures, terrible pictures, of a gentleman named Jitendra Kanti Guha, who is a Hindu leader in Bangladesh. And he was invited to attend a Ramadan iftar dinner and declined, whereupon he was tied to a tree and beaten bloody by local Muslim leaders. And the photographs circulated all over of him being bloodied and tied to the tree. This was obviously an attempt to humiliate the unbelievers, to remind the unbelievers that they are indeed supposed to give respectful submission to the Muslims. And if they don't, as apparently it was taken when he declined the iftar invitation, then this is what will result. In a similar vein, actually, David, in France, there were, toward the end of Ramadan, several reports of prisoners being beaten in prisons in France for not observing the rules of Ramadan. And it was noted that some of the non-Muslim prisoners no longer eat pork because they are afraid of being beaten by the Muslim prisoners.
I think you're grinning because you saw me grinning, but
Good.
You're talking and it reminds me of stuff. So back in the day, I was in prison, and when you said Ramadan, in prison, I don't know why, but the same joke over and over again will crack me up, and like, I don't know, somehow in my mind it gets funnier and funnier the more people do the same thing. Like, so for instance, multiple times per day we'd all have to stand beside our bunks, and the 2 COs would walk in and one of them would yell, count time, and you'll have to stand up. But every single time a CO would walk in and say count time, and someone would yell, count these nuts, right? And and I don't know why it was always funny to me. But whenever we got to Ramadan, they would have special breakfast and special dinner after sundown. that were for the Muslims. And whenever the announcement would come over the intercom, it would say, Ramadan in the cafeteria, Ramadan in the cafeteria. And someone, for no reason, would jump up and yell, "The Robin Don in the cafeteria! Let's go save Don!" And it was every day. It was so every single year for Ramadan, when it said Ramadan in the cafeteria, someone would jump up and yell, "The Robin Don in the cafeteria." And somehow, I don't know if this was just funny, but it's funny because it was so stupid. And I don't know, weird times back in prison. What amuses people?
Yes, next time I'll tell you some of my own prison stories, David, but not this week. Okay. India.
I should make a YouTube channel where I just talk about prison stories, because there's like thousands of them.
That would be a great, I'll bet you could get millions of views, much more than Jihad. Are you kidding?
No, indeed.
There you go. Also in India, story of yet another Hindu procession being attacked. See, the problem is the Muslim. Just seeing the.
I'll take them off there to keep them from distracting you there.
All right. Yes, sir. The Muslim population in India is growing, as it is everywhere, and this means that Muslims are living in more areas because the population is growing. The problems arise when the Hindus have processions at various points in the year, and the processions go through what the Muslims say are their areas. And the problem is that the number of Muslim areas is growing in some parts of India to such an extent that it has become impossible to hold the processions without going through Muslim areas. Now, if this were Indiana, it wouldn't be a problem. If the local Catholic church is having a procession and Protestants live in the area, nobody's going to care. But in, of course, an Islamic context, this is a terrible provocation. And so once again, we had a procession attacked with Muslims screaming Allahu Akbar, throwing bottles and stones from, incidentally, an illegal mosque in the area at a Hindu procession. Let's see, I had another one here that was good. Oh, there's the United States, David. But it's in reverse. Joe Biden was speaking. I don't want to get all political here, but Joe Biden said this week as he celebrated Eid al-Fitr at the White House, he said that Muslims in the United States make our nation stronger every single day, even as they still face real challenges and threats in our society, including targeted violence and Islamophobia that exists. And I thought, wait a minute, targeted violence of Muslims in the United States? David, I track Jihad every day, all day, every day for 20 years now. And I think I would have seen a story if there were targeted attacks against Muslims in the United States. The Religion of Peace.com has the Ramadan Bombathon. The last couple of weeks, you put it up. And they have the attacks by Muslims and attacks by non-Muslims. They have a couple of attacks by non-Muslims there, but they took place in India and Ethiopia. So what on earth is Joe talking about? Where is targeted violence against Muslims in the United States? Have you heard of any?
I'm pretty sure that if something had happened, that it would be on every single news channel all day, yes, every day for like a week.
And then we'd
get blamed, and we'd get banned. We'd get banned for saying any random thing, because we must have been the ones who caused it somehow. And so, yeah. But by the way, a little side note on Joe Biden, because I normally don't say anything about politicians unless it's related to Islam or free speech. If they say something stupid about Islam, or they start crossing the lines on free speech, then I'll point something out. But with Joe Biden, back when he was running for president, he quoted in his message to Muslims, he quoted a hadith that, if you can't do something with your hand, do it with your mouth. And if you can't do it with your mouth, do it with your heart. And he quoted this as some wonderful, loving teaching of Islam, when in context that was referring to different kinds of jihad. It's when you can actually fight the unbelievers and use your physical hands to fight them, then you fight them. If you're too weak in society, then you speak against it. You speak against the other people and preach jihad. And if you're not in a position to do that because you'll be killed, then you just despise them in your heart, and you long for a day when you can actually do it. So I pointed that out. And all of a sudden I noticed that people were saying that my video had been fact checked and declared false, on Facebook. It was, no, this has been fact checked by Politico, and they've deemed it false. And I was like, what's false? He said it. He said that this is what it said. And then I quoted multiple hadiths where Muhammad points out that that's what he's talking about. And so I clicked on the Politico fact check, and the fact check was done by Sheikh Yasser Qadi. And this is the problem with fact checking. I've got a video where he goes on this tirade. David Wood is the most repugnant, evil, disgusting being Allah has ever created. He's talking like that about me the entire time. I was like, wait, so this is the neutral, unbiased fact checker who's fact checking my stories.
The guy who said there are no variants and every Quran is exactly the same as every other.
Until he admitted that he was lying and said there are holes in the narrative.
Indeed.
Gotta love that guy.
Yes.
See, now here's the thing. If I were to make, if something were to become popular right now, we pointed out, hey, Yasser Qadi, when he was talking to popular audiences, would say perfect preservation, not one letter's difference since the time of Uthman. But here, when he's talking to people he calls students of knowledge, then he says, of course, there are different words, there are different letters, there are all kinds of, there are different Qurans in different parts of the world. If we were to post that somehow and Politico were to fact check it, they'd send it to someone like Sheikh Yasser Qadi, false, and then it would be reported as false. This is a problem with these fact checkers.
Yep. Yasser Qadi actually fact checked me years ago. Also, when I put up a video of him, actually it was an audio, excuse me, but it was on YouTube with a still photo of him and I had put it up. I got it from somewhere else. I think I got it from Americans for Peace and Tolerance.
That's what he's talking about, Surah 928, right? The unbelievers are filthy. They're filthy, disgusting things.
Exactly. And so I put that up, and later on he's talking to James White, and he says, Spencer altered a video to make me say these things. And I thought, wow, I'm really good. How did I get him to quote the Quran and say exactly what it says about being unclean?
You and your CGI skills, man.
Amazing. And James White just nodded sadly at my perfidy. But anyway, let's see what else we got here in our remaining minutes. This is not precisely jihad, but it comes out of the same mindset. And I thought that it was worth noting because of that mindset. A video circulating in India of Maulana Jarjis Ansari Hafizullah. You may have heard of this one. And he says in the video, "O Muslim woman, if you don't allow your husband to take advantage of your body, you are committing a grave sin. That's why the Prophet said, even if you are about to deliver a child and your husband wants to enjoy your body and have sex at the time of delivery, then, O Muslim woman, you have to fulfill your husband's wish." Now, this sounds nuts. But this, of course, as you know, David, comes straight from hadiths where Muhammad is depicted as saying, this is a Bukhari hadith, if a husband calls his wife to his bed to have sexual relations and she refuses and causes him to sleep in anger, the angels will curse her till morning. And, of course, then there's another from Ibn Majah, by him in whose hand lies my life, a woman cannot carry out the right of her Lord till she carries out the right of her husband. And if he asks her to surrender herself to him for sexual intercourse, she shall not refuse him, even if she is on a camel's saddle. Now, this it's interesting to note, you were saying before that there's not just submission to Allah in Islam. Islam is full of submission. It's interlocking submissions. The woman must submit to the man. The non-Muslim must submit to the Muslim. Everybody has someone else they must submit to. I guess the Muslim man only needs to submit to Allah. But that's it. He's at the top of the totem pole. Everybody else is submitting to something else besides Allah. And the Muslim woman has to submit to her husband, even in these absolutely extreme and absurd circumstances. And that is not just the opinion of Maulana Jarjis Ansari Hafizullah, who is getting trouble for saying it this week. It is the statements attributed to Muhammad himself.
Yeah, that right there reminds me of this was several years ago. This might have been like 10 years ago when that Muslim scholar in Egypt came out and said that if a woman wants to work around a man, she's going to have to breastfeed him 10 times. And
Yeah.
the entire world went nuts. What a stupid, idiotic teaching, and yet it's exactly what Muhammad said. It used to be in the Quran. It's only not in the Quran because Aisha had the only copy, and her sheep ate it while they were preparing Muhammad's. Her sheep ate it, along with the verse of stoning after Aisha had.
Maybe she just didn't want to breastfeed everybody that came over, so she fed it to the sheep.
The Sheepgate conspiracy. Muhammad's wives changed the Quran.
All right, I've got a few more, but I don't know. I think that's the highlights of the week there, David.
The lowlights of the world.
Indeed, there was a Sunni Shiite incident in Austria where we never saw Sunni Shiite incidents before. A 37-year-old Afghan migrant who is Sunni happened to have a neighbor who is a member of the Shiite Hazara minority from Afghanistan. And so that's something new in Austria that they have not enjoyed before in terms of cultural enrichment. And so he said that he went to his neighbor and he said, the Hazaras should be slaughtered over the back of the head. And he threatened to rape and behead his Shiite Muslim neighbor. This, of course, working exactly from the same assumptions we were talking about before. The Shiites are considered heretics. Heretics should be killed. So he is saying he wants to kill this woman and rape her as part of the humiliation of having been conquered, and behead her as per the Quran's directive to behead.
And wasn't it just earlier this year that there was a plot to attack a Shia mosque, I believe was it Chicago or something like that? And it was...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was another Islamophobia incident that turned out to be a Sunni Shiite incident instead.
And so you have one Muslim group attacking others in Afghanistan, Pakistan, also Europe, the United States. It happens wherever Islam spreads, and yet if we oppose it and we say, guys, just stop following Muhammad's command to wage jihad against unbelievers and hypocrites, we're the bad guys in all of this. When the media, who keep us from criticizing this and who simply cheer it on as it spreads, they've got a hand in all this. If you block criticism against violence and you promote the spread of an ideology that keeps leading to endless violence, even against its own adherents, you got blood on your hands. And so this is a pretty rough situation. All right, well, that's been this week in Jihad. Robert, I was thinking, we talked about the critical Quran, and Amazon has concluded that it's no longer a Quran because complaints. And if you get complaints, then you obviously can't be a Quran anymore. But I think we should flip it and say that this is the only Quran, and it's all other Qurans that are now fake. The only Quran is the critical Quran. So ladies and gentlemen, the link to that is in the description box. Be sure to get a copy, and let's make sure.
We takfir on all the other Qurans.
Yeah. We're gonna takfir all those other Qurans.
Right.
Those are all apostate Qurans.
He must be killed.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, all you Muslims who are watching right now, we know that some of you want to kill us. We know that others of you get mad at us because you don't actually want to hurt anyone. And we're talking about jihad, and you're saying, "Hey, that doesn't truly represent me," and so on. How many times have we said? Hundreds of times. How many times have we acknowledged that there are people like you who do not want to go out and violently subjugate anyone, and so on? Keep in mind, if you are actually peaceful, we're on the same side here. We're on the same side here. There are the people who are actually following Muhammad's commands to violently subjugate the world. You don't like them. We are criticizing their position, not only to keep ourselves safe, not only to keep the world safe, but to keep you guys safe. So do yourselves a favor and stop complaining. Until next time, this has been This Week in Jihad with David Wood and Robert Spencer.